Brother lads, welcome back to the Cossy Arsenal podcast. My name is Cossy. Welcome back to a brand new video. This is the latest Arsenal news and transfer news as well. Atletico Bilbao have made their decision clear on Nico Williams regarding his future and transfer this summer. They are not going to sell him. They're not going to negotiate with any club this summer. Not Arsenal, not FC Barcelona. The president has actually been very angry with the media and also very angry with all the people involved, with the rumors that Nico Williams is going to leave them. And he says the club is running a project that is going to be a long-term project, and Nico Williams is part of that project. However, what this means actually when it comes to the situation of the player is that Nico Williams has the final say on this one. That's number one. And secondly, even if they don't negotiate with any club, they can still sell the player given the release clause of Nico Williams. So it's a very, very interesting turn of events. They're saying they don't want to sell. That is confirmed now. But exactly what it means is what we're going to be explaining in this video. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. In an interview, the president has said Nico is a footballer very committed to an athletic club, that is Atletico Bilbao, and has been subjected to a bombardment of questions about his future in an excessive way and also in an uncontrolled manner. And he says when he's already concentrated to compete at the Euros Cup by the Spanish Football Federation, which is not known to protect him at the moment. Athletic inspires to the maximum without limits. We are showing we have the attractive and winning project for our players and coach as well. The proof is that we have recently renewed two contracts of international players, that is as Simeon and also Vivian, until 2029 and 2031 respectively. And we're talking about Nico. He said Nico, he signed a contract last year until 2027, and coveted players such as Ohan, Bernard and Julien, as well as Paredes, have also been committed to the club for several seasons, which is just an example of what we are doing. And he says Atletico club is very, very economically, socially, and sportingly capable of keeping footballers in the caliber of those mentioned, and also including Nico Williams. So that is the statement that has been produced by the president at Atletico Bilbao. First and foremost, let's start here. So the club is not happy that the media are actually bombarding Nico Williams questions about his future. And I think it's a little bit disrespectful, because in that article he says, where do we start? We should start by the media. We should start by everyone, putting some respect on Atletico Bilbao. So the feeling around the media is that because he renewed a new, he signed a new deal and is earning 200,000 a week, that might actually be the reason for him to leave. Maybe Atletico Bilbao don't have the 200,000 to pay him, per week across 5 years until 2027. But, the club is saying we have the money and we are financially stable to do that. So what does this mean for Arsenal? Why is this, statement very important in Arsenal's, in Arsenal's transfer pursuit for Nico Williams? And why is it very important for Barcelona as well? So the two clubs that are really interested in Nico are Barcelona and Arsenal. That is known everywhere. For us to sign Nico Williams, we have to negotiate with Atletico Bilbao, and for us to talk to him, we have to get permission from Atletico Bilbao as well. So that means that if they don't want to sell, like it has been stated there, they don't have any plans of selling, they don't want any plans of talking to anyone regarding the future of their star boy, it means that you cannot talk to the player. You cannot jump into conversations about personal terms, about about an agreement in principle with the player. You literally cannot do that. And this is what happened with Chelsea and Michael Olise, and Crystal Palace. Chelsea talked to the player without the permission of Crystal Palace. And Crystal Palace told them that is not allowed. That is null and void. So you're either saying you've broken the rules, you've talked to our player without our permission, or you've not talked to the player. So if Arsenal want to sign Nico Williams, there are three things that have to happen. One, we have to talk to the player and agree a deal in principle with him, and that will allow us to trigger the release clause. Now, this is a very different release clause, and this actually doesn't put Atletico Bilbao in a position of power. But for you to talk to a player, for you to talk to another, club's asset, they have to give you permission. You have to have the permission to talk to the player. The player has to give you green light in order for you to trigger the release clause. Now, you can trigger the release clause of the player, but as long as you don't have the green light of the player, he cannot sign for you. It's as simple as that. So this means that Arsenal and Barcelona are going to have to find a way of, getting the consent of the player without asking for consent from Atletico Bilbao. That is so illegal. That is very, very illegal. Secondly, if Arsenal cannot agree personal terms with Nico Williams and Barca cannot, you're not going to have negotiations. That is also confirmed now. So initially, and I think this is important for Arsenal, but also for Barca. Initially, the feeling from Barcelona was they were not ready to trigger the release clause, which is 58 million euros, right? So what they wanted to do was to discuss with Atletico Bilbao so that they could pay a little bit higher than what the release clause actually requires. So let's say they wanted to pay around 65 million euros or 70 million euros for the player, but that would have been paid across installments, because the release clause indicates that almost 40 million euros or 45 million euros of that money has to be paid upfront. The moment you trigger that release clause, you lose 58 million. You lose 50 million euros. I don't think Barca are prepared for that. I don't think Arsenal are prepared for that either. So the general feeling around this deal was that Arsenal could go and talk to Bilbao. Barcelona could go and talk to Bilbao, hold negotiations with them, and see how they could navigate this deal. It's always easy to look at the price and say 58 million euros, that's a bargain. But how much you're going to pay up front and the payment structure of the deal, that is always the problem. That's the same problem Arsenal is facing with Bologna and Ricardo Calafiori right now. Both clubs want to pay 50 million euros, but at the moment, the payment structure is still a very big problem. Bologna want much of the money up front, and they want much of the money in fixed fees. Arsenal is saying we're giving you 40 million euros plus 10 million euros in fixed amounts. And Bologna is saying we are not taking such a deal. It's not a very good deal for us. So that is what's going to happen with Atletico Bilbao and Nico Williams. However, if they are not willing to sell, if they're not willing to negotiate, right? So negotiation is off the table. You also cannot talk to the player. You cannot get permission from Bilbao to officially talk to the player. This is how you sign Nico Williams. And this is what it means for Arsenal. The easier option number one, walk away. It's a deal. Yeah, it's a good deal. Yes, we've been waxing lyrical about Nico Williams. But the first thing right here, the first solution right here is to walk away. It has now become a difficult deal. It's now become a complicated deal. And I know we're going to talk about Atletico Bilbao not having enough power, of much power to block this deal. But eventually, when you look into it, when you factor in the fact that at the moment, right, they hold the power to for you to talk to the player, it's a crazy deal. It's a very, very crazy situation. So walk away. I think that's the first situation Arsenal can do. Go and look at Chiesa, go and look at Bakayoko, go and look at Jasper Asperilla, go and look at Pedro Neto, go and look at other players. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be very, very difficult. But if Arsenal want to stay there, if Arsenal want to remain there and negotiate, this is a deal that is now going to be pushed by the player. And as far as we understand, right, because he did an interview with the media, and he said, all our lives it has been Atletico Bilbao. It's Bilbao we know, right? So if you think about Atletico Bilbao, you think about Nico Williams. If you think about Nico Williams, you think about Atletico Bilbao and his brother Inaki Williams as well. So it's going to be very hard for you to bring a player like Nico Williams, who respects, admires, a club like Atletico, for him to come and push for a move. It's going to be very hard. But that is the only way. That is the only way. Because if he can cause a little bit of, I wouldn't say commotion, but if he can cause pressure, if he can put on pressure behind the scenes, maybe he wants to go to Arsenal, maybe he wants to go to Barcelona, if he can apply some bit of pressure and, Bilbao feel that pressure, maybe they can allow him talk to you. So it's a deal that's going to depend on the player now 100%. The third way, which is again very difficult, is triggering the release clause. Now, where Spanish clubs are not in a very good situation is this: if a club triggers the release clause of your player, they can take him. Right? We did this with Thomas Partey and Atletico Madrid. Madrid said we are not selling. Negotiations off the table, and Arsenal did an absolute waste of time for a whole summer where we were just seated there trying to wait for Atletico Madrid to cut their price on Thomas Partey, and it didn't happen. We waited and waited and waited, and it didn't happen. Nothing happened. What happened on the deadline day? Arsenal decided to go and sign Partey by triggering his release clause. Deadline day, it was La Liga, right? It was La Liga that informed Atletico Madrid that the release clause of the player had been activated by Arsenal FC. It was La Liga. So that is where the power is not entirely in Atletico Bilbao's hands. Yes, they can say, we are not selling our player. They can 100% say that. But where they are also not entirely, where the power is not entirely in their hands is if at any point in time, Arsenal go to La Liga and trigger the release clause of the player. That is what's funny, and that's what's interesting here. You don't trigger the release clause of the player with Atletico Madrid. You trigger the release clause of the player with La Liga. So if Arsenal go and pay 58 million euros or activate the clauses in that release clause of 58 million euros to La Liga, we can take the player. But that means, listen, that means we are pushing Nico Williams to agree or go against his club, a club that he likes so much. So for me, this ends in three ways now. This ends in three ways. Number one, Nico stays for another season or another 2 seasons at the Athletic Club. I think Atletico Bilbao wouldn't be really in a bad position, or they wouldn't really refuse to sell to Barcelona. Selling to Arsenal, that might be a problem. They might not want to lose a Spanish player to an international club. We know that. They want to strengthen their league. They want to strengthen their national team. They want to strengthen Barcelona and Madrid. That happens all the time, right? So they might not want to sell to Arsenal. And I could see them keep the player for another year or even 2 other years until Barcelona can afford him. It's a deal where I can see Barca wait and wait and wait for 2 years, and eventually they sign Nico when they can afford him at their pace. That is number one. Secondly, it ends in Nico Williams going against Atletico Bilbao. This is a little bit difficult. This is very, very difficult. It's difficult for me to see. It's difficult for Nico to do. But if he really wants to go and improve his career, if he wants to go and play for a juggernaut like Arsenal, like Barca maybe, he's got to make a decision. And that decision, however much it's going to be difficult, it's going to have to go against the club you love so much, the club you covet so much, the club that has made you who you are. So, can Arsenal bank on Nico Williams to go against his club? No, you cannot do that. Really, you can't do that. So, the third way this ends, right? It ends in Arsenal walking away. It ends in Arsenal walking away. That release clause, I don't think Arsenal have any chance of paying 50 million euros up front for him. I don't think we're going to do that up front for him. Yes, the 58 million euros, that's a good deal. If it is spread across 3 years, maybe across 4 years, that's a very good deal. But that money almost has to be paid once. It is not financially a very good deal when you think about it in that way. So the feeling around the market was Arsenal and Barca could go in there, negotiate with Atletico Bilbao, talk about it, see how they could actually get this deal to come down. But Bilbao don't want to sell. So Arsenal, now the third option is you walk away. You walk away. It's the good thing that this comes out at a very quick at a very early stage. You can go and try Bakayoko. You can go and try Chiesa. You can go and try anyone. As long as you bring in a backup for Bukayo Saka, as long as you bring in a player who can, share minutes with Saka, I think we will be all right. Even if it's Pedro Neto. I don't like Neto's injury record, and I've said that on this channel like a million times. But even if it's Pedro Neto, what Arsenal really need at the moment is someone to share minutes with Saka, someone to give us that level of assurance that there is quality behind Saka. There is quality beyond Saka. The way Arsenal, strive with Trossard and Martinelli and that partnership on the left. That there is more quality beyond Trossard when Trossard has a bad game. There is quality beyond Martinelli when Martinelli has a bad game. I don't think that's the same thing with Saka. I think with Saka you feel, yeah, we have some quality, but Reece Nelson not really that quality, and Gabriel Jesus quality but not that direct. So I think that's what we're looking for. Anyway, it's complicated now. It's very, very complicated, but either way, let's see what happens.